If you have concerns about the still rising cost of food, or you're concerned about the quality of the food that you do receive off the shelf, in this video I'm going to discuss a few simple things that you can do to stock up on your pantry, keep your supplies ready for that eventual time period where everything may just simply stop. This here Sentinel, let's get into it. Now, I've done videos like this before discussing the various topics of food supply shortages, and to one extent this is going back over some of that territory because it simply doesn't stop. There's still news out there, there's still information coming out. We've got everything from the avian bird flu, we've got potential outbreaks in various sectors for agriculture, for vegetables and fruits. The natural disasters that are occurring all around the world will affect the different growth and outputs of nations where they produce certain types of crops, not just to feed themselves, but to also use in trade and send out all across the world. So I'm going to run through a few simple things that you need to think about when you're building up your pantry supply for those inevitable periods where food may become more of a premium than anything else. So we start right at the top, shelf-stable foods. I'm not going to discuss in any great detail anything that needs to be refrigerated, frozen. I'm going to avoid anything that is made to be microwaved because there is a distinct difference between simply taking food and heating it up in the microwave and food products that are designed to be microwaved in order for them to be properly cooked. So with shelf-stable foods, you have to think about things like canned meats. And I know a lot of people, when you hear canned food, anything, they just simply shut their ears, but it's a necessity. Even if you have a garden, you have to look at how much your garden can produce versus how much you can actually consume. And in many cases, most people, especially small garden people, small yard spaces, window shelves, that sort of thing, you're not going to be producing more than what you consume. So you have to start looking at reasonable alternatives to things. So the canned meats, poultry, fish, that sort of thing. Some of it perfectly fine. Tuna fish as an example. Everyone has at some point tuna fish. It's just one of those things. Canned chicken, there's canned salmon, there's various types of canned meat products such as beef and pork as well. Those give you a high protein level. Now, yes, you can get protein from eating, cups upon cups of beans, which is still healthy, but the volume of protein, the amount of protein you get on a gram per gram or gram to ounce ratio of meat versus beans is completely different. So you would need to consume more beans. And that's not in a negative sense, but it's simply if you are limited on space and that sort of thing, you have to be able to balance out getting high levels of protein in smaller amounts versus medium or moderate levels of protein in larger volumes. Canned vegetables, canned fruits. Once again, if you got a garden, great. If you don't, having stuff on the shelf already canned, already cooked, already set to go to eat, in some cases straight out of the can without any processing, without having to do anything, saves you time, saves you a little bit of money. Now, that's not to say that you need to stock all your shelves from floor to ceiling with nothing but canned goods. You run into other health problems from that, but it is to say that it is a viable and immediately effective option. You go through and you think about the grains as an overall whole. Think in terms of oats, rice, pasta, that sort of thing. Those, again, they can take up space depending upon how big or how bulky they are, but they can make multiple meals. You can stretch them out and they act as a filler, providing you with that almost the psychological soothing effect of having a full stomach. So if you're in a crisis situation where perhaps you're not eating 3 meals a day or even 2 meals a day, you're just consuming 1 meal a day, better to be able to fill sort of your stomach up with something that's going to be a long-term digestive situation, but still be able to provide you some level of nutrients when combined with the other things that I've mentioned, such as the meats and the vegetables. Shelf-stable milk and milk alternatives. I'm not particularly too leaning heavy into that, but it is an option. I mean, I do enjoy milk, but it's not in my top 10 list of things that I need to get. But you may have small children, so you want to think more in terms of infants, especially baby formula, having that on hand. But using dried milk and milk powders, evaporated milk in the cans can also be an alternative for those of you that simply, even for just baking, certain recipes require some amount of milk. So the benefit to that is a few cans of condensed milk or evaporated milk, depending upon what you're making, can allow you then to make a recipe for 5, 6, maybe 7 meals or more, depending upon what it is that you're putting together. So that's the primary advantage to being able to have that type of item. Snacks. I talk about this also. It keeps your mind to one extent distracted, but also occupied. If you've got something to snack on, crackers, granola bars, things like that, things that don't have to be super, super healthy, but they can also be fun, light and easy. They're not designed to be a meal replacement. That's the key thing. You don't want to load up and just have that be what you're eating for who knows how much time. But you want to have something that you can snack on, nibble on, instead of cutting into your supplies that you may have already rationed out and metered out to last you X number of days. Now, with all that being said, that's effectively the basis that any prepper pantry should go on. The amount that you have based upon the people, specific nutritional diets, all that sort of thing, you have to take that into account on your own. Now, another thing that a lot of people don't think about, but we saw more of it during the early period of COVID, is there are some products that whenever there's a crisis, whenever there's something that disrupts the just-in-time delivery system, whether it be a major natural disaster somewhere, whether it be a worker labor union strike, whether it be some type of interference in the production to distribution to retail aspect of it, certain types of products, not everyone on an individual basis, but certain types of products tend to either fly off the shelf first from consumer panic, but also take a little bit longer to get going. One of the top things you're going to start seeing more of, especially when it comes to any type of disease that goes out there, is PPE, personal protective equipment. You're going to still see the masks, the gloves, the hand sanitizer. You're going to see the bleach, the sanitation wipes. You're going to see the toilet paper. You're going to see all the things related to personal hygiene and sanitation start going quickly, because in many cases, as an example, small restaurants, doesn't matter what size it is, they have to meet certain health standards. So if they hear that there's some type of outbreak of a norovirus or something else like that, they're going to be buying bleach and Lysol sprays and wipes and everything by the dozen as soon as they can, because they need to keep their cooking areas and their surface areas as clean as possible to prevent the further spread of that type of outbreak. Even on an individual basis, we've all gone through the experience of, we always think, oh, we've got enough of this because we're using it on a normal daily basis. But then when you double, triple that, quadruple that for the usage, especially when it's multiple people or multiple locations, that hand sanitizer, the toilet paper, the body wipes, all of that stuff disappears pretty quickly. Even on a side note, when you start thinking about toothpaste, deodorant, things like that, that most people don't roll through on a regular basis week after week after week, when you're either locked down or you have multiple people all staying together where normally they might be dispersed, now you start running through those things a lot faster. Medications, that is a key critical thing. If you have any type of medication, even if it's over the counter, that can be interrupted by any of those number of events. But especially if it's prescription, it may take time to get that and get it manufactured. And if there's an issue with some of the base chemicals that many medicines are made from not being available or being at a higher cost, with or without insurance, doesn't matter. That means it's going to take more time for you to get your refills, more time and more money for you to maintain that necessary level of health that you need for that particular period. You think about also components in terms of electronics, especially. Still, again, semiconductors and other minerals, rare minerals, are used for everything with electronics in it. Every single thing has it. Now, we don't really think about it because everything that you're using, driving, watching on your phone, whatever, is already made. But all the new stuff that gets made by the tens of thousands on a daily basis, if there's an interruption in that process at some point, production stops. Fuel and energy, that's another key thing. Nothing gets anywhere without fuel. The more fuel costs, the higher the prices are for shipping. When the fuel itself is unavailable or not as widely dispersed, it takes a little while to get there. That slows things down. So everything from going back to oil embargoes or shortages in fuel costs, that raises the gas prices at the pump. That raises the overall cost of products depending upon where you're buying them from. And yes, people say, shop local and everything, and local only works for so long. If local was effective everyone would always do it. But even people that are local have to get supplies in from somewhere. There are very few businesses that are a broad enough area. You know, a small niche business could do on its own fine, but a general store, retail, that type of thing where you offer multiple products, they're not making it themselves. They're still buying it from someone at a wholesale discount cost and then turning around and selling it to you. When you go through this and you start looking at what you have in your pantry, you want to break down, in many cases, how much do you normally consume. And the first and foremost important thing is to remember, buy what you actually eat. If you're a person that buys, the name brand product, buy the name brand product. If you've never tried a generic version of it, try it. Sometimes it's the same thing, different wrapper. Sometimes there are distinct differences. In many cases, you'll be surprised. Even if you go to another name brand, it's just a product you haven't tried, try it out. And I'm talking in terms of food specifically. Functional items, everyone has their personal choice, but food specifically, because if you're not going to enjoy eating it, you're not going to eat it. And the last thing you want to have is 200 cans of beans and everything else that you just absolutely hate the taste of. And sure, in a real situation, having something, eating and not starving is far better than looking at the shelf full of foods knowing that you're wasting away. No one realistically would let it go that far, but don't even let it get to that point. Buy the things that you're going to eat. And also keep in mind, they have daily recommended values for nutritional intake. A lot of that, to one extent or another, can be adjusted. It's sort of a sliding scale depending upon what you're doing, your level of activity. Even in terms of water, which is very critical, you always want to make sure you have a lot of it. The FEMA suggests having 1 gallon per person per day. Granted, under adverse conditions, you could sweat out a gallon's worth of effectively water if you're out hiking, chopping wood, walking mile after mile after mile, doing something intensive all the time. But if you're basically sitting around listening to the radio, reading a book, you're not burning off as much energy. You're not perspiring as much, unless it's a sauna box where you're sitting in. You maybe not need as much water. But something to keep in mind, when you buy, let's say, a case of water, where this individual bottle is 16.9 ounces, it came in a case of 40. That measures out to roughly being about 5.3 gallons worth of water. So taking that simple math, just call it 5 gallons. If you give 1 case per person in your household and then split that to a half gallon's worth of consumption per day, not counting for cooking, not counting for sanitation, bathroom usage, just for water consumption, you've got 10 days per case right there at the minimum. And you can adjust your needs as you see fit going through that process. You start looking at certain things for, your oats, your rice, your grains. You can look at how much is in the container and basically the number of servings that you get in there, and then you can start to plan out your meals. Many cases, you can build up a 3-week supply very quickly, and that 3-week supply, even repeating the same process, you just look at the individual goods that you're going to buy next, builds from 3 weeks, then you have a month and a half, then you've got 3 months. At a 3-month window, and yes, I hear it all the time, and it is a good goal to have a full year's supply worth of food, but not everyone has the space physically to keep a full, ready-to-go year's worth of supply of food. You may rotate through a year's worth of food in your stocks, but you won't have 1 full year sitting up there, and that's perfectly fine. Having a 3-week minimum, moving up to maybe 3 months, that would be an optimum. That's just my opinion. That would be an optimum, because the way I look at it is the situation is that dire where it is completely, nothing is available. Everything has been taken, bought, looted, or destroyed. There's nothing on shelves anywhere. The clock's already ticking at that point. Most people are going to die from starvation and malnourishment and diseases that come from that after several weeks of basically eating nothing but stale potato chips and warm yoo-hoo, that sort of thing. So you look at having a good stable supply of shelf-stable foods for 3 months. Not to sound grim, but you're going to outlast most people that are panicking in the streets all around you, because you won't have a need to go out there to get that one last purchase of this or that one last purchase of that. So as I said before, this is primarily for people who are new to prepping, emergency preparedness, looking to build up their supplies, get things going. but it's still good advice for those of us that have been doing it for a while, because sometimes, we let certain things sort of fall into the back, out of sight, out of mind, and then next we have to end up doing a sort of a clearinghouse of older items that we didn't take care of beforehand, and now they're at that point where they're going to be going to the no good section versus the ready to rock and roll section. That's all I got for you now. Check out the next video that YouTube says of mine is something good for you to watch, and I'll catch you in the next one.